Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. This is NFA Live. We have Rob from Digital Asset News up in the top right, and Guy from Coin Bureau. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Market's up. I'm happy.
Thanks, man. Good to see you. Good to see you back. Glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit better, but I feel like it's a perpetual state of being sick with all these little kids. But we are going to talk a lot today about not only this move by Bitcoin to 35K. We also want to talk a little bit about some of the altcoin market. I know Rob has been doing a lot of videos recently on sort of like DCA strategies and whatnot, so we can pick his brain there. We'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin dominance, everyone's favorite topic. I believe the last time we spoke about it, it was at like 51 or 52%. Yeah. And so now it's gone up to 54%. I think we've all been of the opinion that the dominance will head higher. And now that it has, I'm curious if you guys think it's near topping out or if it has further room to run. Powell came out and they decided to keep the Fed funds rate at 5.5%, the Federal Reserve. And so just curious if you guys think that's the terminal rate. I imagine I know your answer, but I guess the bigger question is, do you think that rate is sufficient to actually bring inflation back down to the target, right? Because it's about whether it's restrictive enough or not. And then I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts about any of the ongoing events. I haven't really been following up too much with them, but there's the trial, of course, with Sam Bankman-Fried. Maybe there's some updates with some of the other stuff like Celsius and whatnot. Perhaps Rob could fill us in about that. I think he follows it maybe a little bit closer. But those are the questions. So why don't we just go ahead and jump in?
Sure.
First question, Rob. Bitcoin was 35K, almost 36K, I believe.
Yeah.
So the question is with the spot ETF around the corner, with the halving around the corner, is there anything to be concerned about, or is it just smooth sailing?
Oh, it's going to be smooth sailing. We're going to go up, and there'll be no pullbacks, and everybody will have Lambos, and it'll be awesome. It's going to be sweet. Yeah. So like, that's the dream that everybody gets sold, and it's bull. It's just not going to happen. So there's always things to be concerned about. And this is the thing of why, like, for everybody who's watching at home, this is important, why you take a look at all the things that are happening and you follow smarter people than me, such as Guy and Ben, to figure out what's going to happen. So like, when I take a look at this, I think the things that can, first of all, the big question is what's going to happen with the actual economy. And then, so here, I'm just going to share my screen because this is the easiest way to do it, is that we don't know what's going to happen. So thankfully, Ben watches all these boring announcements from Jerome Powell, and I just read his tweets, and I understand what's happening. And if you take a look at it, like, I don't think that Bitcoin will probably do okay, but the altcoin market will probably just dump fast if we have a recession moving into it. So this is what Powell said. A couple of things. It'd be hard to see how you would do that, put recession back in the forecast. And this is, of course, we're talking about the recession. If you look at the activity, which is not indicative of a recession in the near term. Now, this is the same person that said, this is, well, actually, it was, I think it was Janet Yellen who said inflation is transitory. But still, they've been wrong some places here. And if we take a look at the GDP, I mean, in all honesty, it's so far so good. Q3, we're up 4.9%. GDP, if you take a look at, if I steal all the information from Ben's site again, we're just going pretty much the straight line up. And then as far as like the balance sheet for the Federal Reserve, you can see very clearly that, yeah, as far as their balance sheet, they're continuing to do the same thing, which is offloading. The M2 money supply they peaked out around March or July 2022. They've retracted that. They print a little money and they've come back down again. And then lastly, as far as like, rate cuts, because we're always looking at, if you want to take a look at the 10 and the 2 year or the 10 and the 3 month, doesn't matter. If we're taking a look at like recessions and things like that, from the time that we actually pivoted, and I just took a look at the last 4 years, the time that we actually pivoted or had a rate cut, the pause of the recession, or when we pause, the last time with 89, it was 1 year and 4 months. A pivot took a year. A positive recession took 10 months. A positive recession in the Great Recession took 18 months. And then, of course, the last one, the positive recession, 1 year.
Rob, are you showing anything besides the tweet? Because all we see is the tweet.
Oh, damn it. Hold on. You think I'd be better at this.
I wasn't sure, like, if you were or not.
Sorry.
Should I add the new thing to the stage?
Yeah, put that in. I picked the wrong tab. This was what I was trying to show.
Okay.
But regardless, it's the same thing I just said. Last four recessions, and you had like a positive recession 1 year and 4 months, a positive recession 10 months, and we paused back in August, I think. Positive recession 18 months, positive recession 1 year 1 month. So again, I think as we move forward, the things to be concerned about is one, what is happening in the macro. So yeah, it looks like the recession could be pushed off, but like we talked about before, maybe we're rallying into a recession, which is what's happened a lot of the different times, especially since I think except for the 60s. And then if we do hit a recession, then things will hurt. But the big thing that everybody thinks about is well, who cares, because we're going to get an ETF coming in, and maybe it is. But the question you have to ask yourself, because you have to be a contrarian, is when everybody is looking forward to something, and I think it's going to be the best thing of all time, you have to think to yourself, is this one of those buy the rumor, sell the news, or is this really going to kick off everything? And of course, there's going to be people, you can sound off in the comment section. Some people are going to say it doesn't matter because all the institutions are here, it's going to skyrocket. And other people are like, is it really going to happen? Because we've seen what happens with, like, in 2017, the CBOE and the futures Bitcoin market. That's up for you to decide. So I think it's a great rally. I'm very happy. I mean, let's be honest, but is it smooth sailing from here? It's never smooth sailing. It's crypto.
Well, it's true. It's true. It's never smooth sailing. Guy, what are your thoughts? I know you've been pretty upbeat recently with this move by Bitcoin to the upside. Are you pretty optimistic here over the next few months with the halving SPY ETF theoretically being approved? Any reason to be concerned, or what do you think?
I think, Ben, a good thing to pick up on first is that word theoretically. Now, I think the Bloomberg analysts have the chance of the ETF being approved at around 90% now, and they obviously know a lot more than I do about it. So I think it's extremely likely to happen, but I think we should never rule out the fact that it could, it's not been approved yet. So it's something we just need to be aware of. That said, the SEC does seem to be engaging, I think, which is a really positive sign, engaging with the applicants, because I think BlackRock, I think Fidelity as well, and maybe one other have actually tweaked their applications. And I think that's been after consultation with the SEC. So although part of me thinks Gary Gensler would probably do anything in his power to stop a spot Bitcoin ETF, I think probably they are inevitable. But we should still keep in the back of our minds that the admittedly slim chance that they might not be approved. So, I mean, that's something to bear in mind. I must say, you're absolutely right, Ben. I am very excited about everything that we've seen at the moment. It does seem, although the bear market I don't think is over yet, the end does seem to be in sight. I think we may see a few sort of false dawns as far as the bull market is concerned, but we really do seem to be perhaps in the final stretch of the bear market, which is really positive, or entering the final stretch. I think another thing to bear in mind with the ETFs as well, okay, they're going to get approved. I think that's pretty nailed on. I wonder just what the interest is going to be like. I think a lot of people are assuming, perhaps we're all assuming, that as soon as these ETFs are approved, there's going to be an absolute stampede of money into them. And there are plenty of places where that money could come from. But of course, if you look at the wider macro picture, like Rob was a few moments ago, again, that's a pretty big assumption. There's not a huge amount of liquidity out there. There's a lot of other things that people need to be concerned about as well. So I do wonder what the effect on the market would be if the ETFs get approved and then they're a little bit of a damp squib. Now, I don't think they're going to be anything like the damp squib that the Ethereum futures ETFs were a few weeks ago. But I think we should I think we should probably bear that in mind, that the demand for them may not be massive out of the gates. So that's something I'm keeping in the back of my mind. I also wonder what will happen if demand is low. I wonder what is going to happen to GBTC. If it converts to an ETF, because there are going to be a lot of GBTC holders who bought at an enormous discount. Could they could theoretically then sell for an instant profit? What effect would that have? I mean, remember, of course, GBTC is the largest Bitcoin fund at the moment. So that things like that kind of weigh on my mind a little bit. There's also the regulatory landscape in the US. Yes, Bitcoin is safer, in theory, than all other cryptos, but regulation is still an issue. I think earlier today, PayPal actually received a subpoena from the SEC over its stablecoin, over PYUSD, which I think may turn out to be a bit of a nothing burger, but it does kind of remind us that this regulatory situation is far from resolved. So that's something to bear in mind. And kind of picking up on what Rob was saying as well, just the fact that people are expecting it to be up only from here, just because there is this massive upswing in sentiment, that in itself makes me nervous. Do you know what I mean? It's it goes back to that: be fearful when others are greedy. Well, if you look at the fear and greed index, people are greedy, which makes me feel a little bit fearful. And of course, the other thing I think worth pointing out is just retail investors. This is what we need for things to really kick off. We need a resurgence of interest from people who have either left the crypto ecosystem in the last year or so, or people who have not yet dabbled in it. We need those new market participants. Ben, you've talked about this a lot as well. So although the picture is like way more optimistic than it was even just a couple of weeks ago, there's still a few tripwires out there that we need to be aware of.
You know what? Before we go on, let me ask you guys a question, because I was thinking about what you said, Guy, about the nervousness in the market about what's going to happen. Is it going to be when this ETF is going to be demand or not? Let's just say, for example, you had $10 million, right? You got it from your buddy, Scam Wankman Fraud, and he gave you 10 million, and you could put this in anywhere. Let's say that you're like just an average individual. Let's say that you are an institution. Let's say that you're a family office. Like, how would you? I mean, of course, we're going to be a little biased because we're into the digital assets and Bitcoin and crypto. But where would you put it? Because I mean, if you think about it, like you can put it into, like, Ben, I know you've done some things with T-bills, right, and bonds.
Yeah.
Where like if you think about it, like because like I'm a big real estate person, and I wouldn't buy real estate right now.
Right.
So like, guess where would you put your money, or would you just hold on to it, wait for a crash if there is a crash? What if there's not a crash? That's the thing.
Well, if you go to the I think we track like money going to like money market funds on the website, and I mean it's basically just been going parabolic, right? I mean I think a lot of people are just chasing yields. Might not be the worst idea to lock in some of the longer term yields, because who knows how long yields will stay this high. But because you mentioned earlier, I think GDP last quarter came in at 4.9.
4.9.
Yeah. Well, do you know the estimate for this quarter is at 1.2 right now? So it's a pretty big drop.
That's a huge drop.
Yeah, I mean, we have a long way to go right before the end of the quarter, and the Atlanta Fed will obviously consistently update things. But I guess it depends on if they've reached their objective or not. I mean, I think a lot of people are happy to sort of do a mix of both, hedge one way, hedge the other. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, Guy, what about you? 10 million.
10 million, eh? Wow. I would certainly allocate some to Bitcoin. But I mean, I think I don't know, like real estate. What's your? Why are you not investing in real estate at the moment? Is that because you think the market's going to get a lot worse? The bottom's likely to fall out of it?
I think things are just overpriced still. I mean, but the great thing is that there's low demand because people don't want to buy because the prices are actually higher. And of course the rates are a little bit up, but people don't understand, like when I bought my first house in 1972, no, I was kidding. Like in 2001, that was the same rates back then, roughly. So like people say that. So like there's low demand, but there's low output. I mean, people are building, but then the price remains the same. I mean, as far as like a median amount, I don't know if it's like, for me, for real estate, I don't think there's much of an upside, especially if you're gonna do short-term rentals. Right now, for like year over year here in Puerto Rico, we're down over 50% from the actual people who are signing up and using our properties. So like, again, why would you even do it? So for me, I look at them like, well, I could do equities. And Ben, you did a video on this just I think yesterday or a couple of days ago, when of course you were coughing the whole time, but that's okay. And what else are you gonna do? You got 4 kids. And you talked about how you're like, well, you could do treasuries, T-bills and be safe, or you can try to get in the S&P 500 and get 7%, maybe 9%. But why would you do that when you can get 5?
I mean, it all depends on how much risk people want to take on, right? And I think that's the clear thing. Like, there's what's right for Rob might be not right for me, or what's right for me might not be right for a Guy or someone in the comment section. It all depends on how much risk everyone wants to take on.
Right.
Yeah.
Why don't we move on to the next question? Very important topic, something we've been talking about for the better part of 2 years. Rob's favorite topic, I know. He won't stop going on about it. But I mean, there has been a big move in the dominance of Bitcoin recently, and I think that it's worthwhile to talk about. I mean, anytime you get like a 2% move in the dominance in such a short period of time, I think it merits discussion, right? I mean, that's a pretty big move. I think only a year ago, 54% dominance was scoffed at by many, right? Like, no way it was a possibility, and it was going to get rejected at 49%, just like it always does, and blah blah blah. But here we are, and dominance is around 54%, showing that the king still reigns supreme in terms of market share for the cryptocurrency asset class. So I'm curious, Rob, I know you've been pretty bullish on the Bitcoin dominance for a while. Are you thinking it has room to run higher, or is it time for it to take a back seat?
No, because I mean, like, there's a narrative still out there, right? And the narrative is that the ETF is going to get approved. So why, if you're big money, why would you say, you know what, pet Bitcoin, that's what we're going to go into? No, and because like I always remember, like Mark Cuban, they asked him, like, how'd you make all your money? And he talked about his .com startup. Well, what do you do now? He's like, I put it in bonds. He goes, why would I do that? Because it's the simplest thing to do. I get a guaranteed yield, so why would I put it into like the stock market like that? I mean, he does that, but that's the majority of what he does because he's super rich. And I think the super rich people and the people that can really sway, they're going to probably look into Bitcoin first, and then they're probably going to get into something down the line, whether that be Ethereum, or that be Solana, or that be Caspa, or that be Pepe Coin. I'm just kidding, whatever it is. So I think that the Bitcoin dominance will probably peak out, and hopefully, Ben, I think your number is 60%. I can see that happening. But remember, it goes into Bitcoin, then people take some profits, they put it into alts run up, they take profits, and they stick it back into Bitcoin. And just like a cycle. So I don't know if that cycle is kind of playing out a little bit, because I think now the total market cap we're at 1.35 trillion, somewhere around there. So there's some new money kind of flowing in, but I think it's some alts are running, but not a lot, but some are not.
Guy, what about you? What are your thoughts on dominance here? I mean, while it's true that dominance has gone from 52 to 54%, there are some altcoins that have made some moves, right? It's not like altcoins just have sat there and done nothing. So, do you think that, I mean, I think the other thing to consider too is, while there has been a pretty impressive run up by dominance over the last couple of years, it's been a stochastic process, right? Like, it goes up a few percent and then it pulls back a few percent, right? It's sort of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So I'm curious, do you think we're going to continue that pattern of sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back for a little while, or do you think it's going to start going 1 step forward and 2 steps back?
I think probably. I think the forward momentum will continue. I think because I think Rob pinpointed the really important word in all of this, and that's narrative. I think the narrative is so strong around Bitcoin at the moment. Not only the ETFs, but of course we've got the halving coming up in a few months now. That I think is one of those aspects of Bitcoin and one of those aspects of cryptocurrency in general that sort of the wider public seems to be able to grasp. It's something I think that has kind of the ear of the mainstream media, if you like, as well as obviously being a massive deal within crypto itself. So for me, that confirms what Rob was saying. Really, the narrative is around Bitcoin. The narrative is probably going to stay around Bitcoin, and will the outflows from BTC as people start to get deeper and deeper in profit? Will those outflows will money coming into BTC from outside, from institutions, from people buying the ETFs, from people buying, around the halving in anticipation of a pump further down the line, will those inflows outweigh the outflows from BTC into altcoins? Not for some time. I think that's further down the line, and I think Bitcoin holds that narrative for the time being. But yeah, having said that, of course, as you point out, like altcoins are hardly, some are going absolute gangbusters at the moment. And I think from our point of view here at Coin Bureau, we're looking at metrics, we're seeing sort of views going up, we're seeing kind of more engagement, et cetera. We're seeing an improvement in sentiment. And I think within you look at crypto Twitter, for example, altcoins are, they're getting discussed a heck of a lot. But what I think is really going to move it is outside interest, institutional interest, and later kind of, more general retail interest. And as Rob says, that starts with Bitcoin. And yeah, I don't see why dominance couldn't sort of push towards 60%, as I think you've targeted as well.
I'm just following your guys' lead on dominance. I think you guys are both pretty bullish on it, so I'll jump on that bandwagon. The next thing, so now that we've identified why alts will bleed to Bitcoin, I'm curious, what are some altcoins that have caught your eye over the last few weeks? Because they won't bleed to Bitcoin forever. Normally I saw someone sort of put it somewhat eloquently. And I'm coughing, so I can't put it eloquently, but it was basically like, your bear market year, cash is king, right? In the pre-halving year, it tends to be like Bitcoin and cash, right? So Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin goes up, the dominance goes up, and cash just so you have money to sort of buy dips along the way. And then in the halving year, it tends to be like Bitcoin and altcoins, because in the halving year, altcoins can actually start to outperform Bitcoin. And in the post-halving year, that's when you start to take those profits and try to get out. You rotate capital from Bitcoin to alts and whatnot, and then you sort of get back into cash and prepare for the bear market year. But with that in mind, with the sort of the idea in mind that altcoins could start to outperform Bitcoin sometime, let's say in the halving year, what are some? Guy, I'll start with you first. And it doesn't have to be a specific altcoin, but like, are there any ecosystems that are interesting to you right now? Just general projects that seem to be a little bit vibrant recently. It doesn't have to have anything to do with the price per se, but just what's catching your eye?
Before I say, can I point out that this is hugely bullish as far as I'm concerned, Ben. Ben is taking an interest in altcoins. This is huge. This is
the real indicator.
So
this is the indicator I've been waiting for.
No. So let me be clear. They usually start to outperform Bitcoin sometime in the halving year, and the last I checked, it is not the halving year. So we will see. I still think alts are going to bleed back to Bitcoin for at least a couple more months. But sometime next year they'll probably start to outperform.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I'll clutch onto any straw that I see, Ben. I think in terms of ecosystems, the two ones that I've sort of been most aware of recently are Cosmos. I've been a big fan of Cosmos for ages. I've talked about it a few times on the stream. I think Celestia, I think that was one of the big sort of stories of this week, a kind of modular blockchain launching in Cosmos. So that's one ecosystem. There seems to be a lot happening there. Just had now got Bitcoin on Cosmos thanks to a project that's its name slipped my mind. So yeah, so that's an ecosystem I've watched a lot. I've also when I was in Singapore, I was chatting to a lot of people in the Cardano ecosystem, and actually it's the Cardano Summit happening here in Dubai at the moment. And I remember thinking, like, you know, a lot of people are not big fans of Cardano. You know, there's always lots of criticism of it. But I must say, the number of really smart, intelligent people who I spoke to who were building what sounded like some pretty cool stuff in the Cardano ecosystem, I was pleasantly surprised by that. So that's another one that I'm watching. Those are two. So Cosmos and Cardano, as far as ecosystems go. In terms of kind of more specific projects, we've recently started reviewing altcoins again. We've got our new subscription service, Coin Bureau Club, which we launched recently. So we're now kind of diving back into these altcoin reviews. A couple that have really stood out to me recently have been we've just filmed one on Metis, which is a layer 2 for Ethereum, founded by Vitalik's mum, funnily enough. So there's a narrative for you, but that's got some seriously impressive tech. Kleros is another project that Vitalik himself is a big fan of. Very underrated. It's kind of a decentralized dispute resolution protocol, which we covered a few weeks ago. That is absolutely fascinating as well. So Kleros, and then Injective, which is a real kind of favorite among the Coin Bureau team. Injective seems to be the one that everyone in the office is watching, and that's a Cosmos-based layer 0. And I actually met the team from Injective back in 2022, but in Miami, and they were a really smart bunch. So I was kind of, we had a nice afternoon with them. So that's just 3 in particular I'm looking at, and yeah, I mean, incredible tech and incredible ideas in all of them. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at the moment, among many others, I should say.
Seems like you got a lot of fans in the chat, people liking what you have to say about some of these coins. Someone says, nice to hear that about ADA. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's good that you guys are providing insight. No, I'm not going to. So Rob, at least not till next year. Rob, what do you think? I mean, do you sort of echo what Guy said? I know you've been DCA. I know you've DCA'd into quite a few alts over the last year or so.
Yeah.
I mean, how are things going over there with that? I mean, I imagine some of them are back up right now, and not necessarily in the money, but at least with the move, it's at least made the bags a little less heavy, maybe.
They're still pretty heavy, let's be honest. And then before we move on, you know, Ben, that people are yelling at their screens right now, but what about fill in the blank crypto? Like, this one is outperforming, da da da. Look, that's true. There's going to be some that are going to outperform Bitcoin. There's some and a lot that will not. I think if you think they're doing pretty well right now, just wait till next year after the halving and see how well those altcoins do. And I like it because right now, like, people who were in 2021 that got into the top, they've, I see them in Twitter and they're like, hey, this is my first bull run. I'm so excited. Like the last 7 days, I'm like, oh, you think this is good? Just wait until next month or 2025 when your face starts to melt off. So I know, I'm not going to get too bullish, but look, I'm telling you guys, I think the next one's gonna be pretty big. And then Guy, if you're gonna be for that the Cardano convention, do me a favor. Like, when you're there, I know you already interviewed Charles Hoskinson. I gotta check that out, but check out. I want you to see the Cornucopias game to see if that's live and you can play it. And just tell me how that is. Okay. And also because they built it on Cardano, and also, of course, World Mobile Token, because I like that project for communication and stuff like that. But as far as cryptos or alts, Let me show everybody exactly what I'm investing into. Let me put a tab in there.
I can't
There
see.
you go.
There we go. All right.
So this is the thing that I use every Sunday, and I show everybody what I'm investing, or what I'm dollar cost averaging. Ethereum, well, Bitcoin first. And remember, some of these I buy them every day, and some I buy them every week. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, Dogecoin, Chainlink, Polygon, Atom, Near, Arbitrum, and Algorand. These are the ones that we started in September. I picked up a couple of different gaming coins and things like that. But if you just go from 2000, let's go all the way back 2022 to March of 2022. This is which ones I'm up. It's only 4: Solana, Link, Bitcoin, Ethereum. If you've been dollar cost average like me, you're still have some heavy bags, not as bad. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are in the red, and the other ones are green. But to me, again, this one doesn't matter so much to me, because I know that later on I'll be rewarded, just not right now. So I know people say, "Oh, Rob, you must feel like this is because you've been dollar cost averaging." It's a long process. And just because like some things have gone up, other things have not. And the ones that I think are going to go up pretty high, like the Arbitrum and the Nears and things like that, maybe like the Ronin chain, Nakamoto, Alluvium, stuff like that, it's going to take some time. And it's not for the faint of heart. So that's what I'm doing. And some are doing good, some are not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process. It's a long journey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It sure is. I think that's sound advice, Rob, because I mean, at times like this, it's easy to get carried away and sort of like caution to the wind and start feeling the FOMO and stuff. It's like it is a long process, and when it feels even longer when you're in it. Do you know what I mean? And then you look back and it seems like it just happened in the blink of an eye sometimes, but actually it was weeks and months of not even checking to see.
Yeah.
Not even checking your portfolio, because you know what it's going to look like.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's just play the long game.
Yeah, I had Gary Cardone on the channel a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about DCA and strategies. And afterwards, when the interview was over, he said, "Hey, do you show him your portfolio every week?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You shouldn't do that." I said, "Why?" He goes, because, and he was right. He goes, "Why would you look at the price of your house and the valuation every single week? They'll make you crazy." He goes, it's a long-term play. He goes, just like Bitcoin and alts. He goes, "Why don't you just not show them?" And I said, "I just do that because I feel like it's good for people to understand it's a long process. But yeah, in the long run, I probably shouldn't show everybody that, because it makes them kind of like, damn, that's a lot of time." But it's just the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good way to think about the market, right? I mean, no, I mean, I feel like a lot of us have equities, or you have 401ks or whatever, and it's not like you're pulling that up every single day to see kind of how it's going. But yeah, I know there's been a lot of comments. I've just sort of been putting them up on the screen. But
I like Tom Crown's. Yeah. Ben, your skin does look good. It must be the antibiotics.
Yeah, I saw Tom Crown was asking about our skincare routines.
Yeah.
As if we would give that sort of information away for nothing.
Yeah, man. I'll talk about my portfolio, but I'm not going to talk about my skincare line. Come on.
I mean, Tom, some things are sacrosanct.
All right. The Fed yesterday, right? 5.5%. We're still at 5.5%. Seems to be the new normal. I mean, I kind of got the sense that, and I know you guys were eagerly listening in as well. I kind of got the sense that Powell, like while they wrote down another rate hike in the SEP last meeting, I think they're probably done. Guy, what do you think? I think I asked you, Guy, a while back, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, and I think you thought they were done, and ever since then they haven't raised again. So do you think they're at the terminal rate? And I guess if you think they're going to just sit here and pause for the next few months, do you think they've done enough? Do you think that it's sufficient, right? Sufficiently restrictive? to actually slow the economy down. I mean, as again earlier, Rob pointed out, GDP was at 4.9% annualized last quarter. So have they done enough? And yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. I guess if the economy, the economy is still doing, the US economy is still doing really well, which suggests perhaps that they haven't. But, I guess what stands out to me every time I look at one of these press conferences, every time I sort of try and analyze Jerome Powell's body language and his tone of voice, I get the impression that they probably see this as enough, because they have the option of higher for longer. The thing that they don't want to do, I think, going back to this inflation is transitory thing, which is a stick we beat them with many times. They don't want that to happen again. They don't want to be caught out again. So they're leaving the door deliberately open. So that because how many times has Powell said that they're watching the data, and then he goes on to reiterate, committed to bringing inflation back down to the 2% target. So I think it's classic kind of Fed speak. It's classic kind of politician speak. They don't want to commit either way. They don't want to say, well, yeah, this is it, because they know how reactive markets can be. But they want to keep all options open, I guess, so as they don't have to admit that they're wrong if they do have to raise rates. So my guess is that it will probably remain unless the data really sort of, inflation really does start to creep back up again. So yeah, and higher for longer, which again is a phrase that Powell has, I think used a number of times. So that seems to me to be their best option at the moment, and that is, I imagine, what they will continue to do. Keep them where they are. Is it enough to bring inflation down? I mean, only time will tell. Only time will tell. We can only watch the data and keep our fingers crossed, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the sort of the 70s or the 80s. That's, I think, what we want to avoid, where they didn't do enough, and then we just basically went sideways for 10 or 15 years. So hopefully they've done enough, and it's just a matter of waiting. Rob, what do you think? I mean, are you in the 5.5% terminal rate camp here?
Sure. Throw up that screen, would you? This guy does all my work for me. And this is what Jerome says it very clearly, right? And the question was, what makes you confident the tighter conditions and 500 basis points rate hike and a minor bank crisis have not done to bring things down? He said, that's the way our policy works. Sometimes it works with lags that can be long and variable, higher for longer, and that's what they're going to do. And I know some people will say, well, they're screwing up everything, and the Fed doesn't know what they're doing. But in all honesty, I mean, inflation. I mean, look, they did their job, right? 9% year over year. Of course, we've gone a little bit up, but I mean, that's what they've done, and I think that if you can believe what Jerome Powell says and what he believes, then he's just going to, like Guy said, it's going to be higher for longer, and that's it. And we'll see how it actually works out. I don't think that they're going to raise again, but they are still kind of quite hawkish, aren't they? So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they want to at least keep it there for a while so that it has an effect on the economy, because it's not about just the rate. It's also about how long do they keep it there. Last question. I honestly, I haven't been following the news that much. I know that the trial has been going on. Do you guys have any insight into what's going on over with the trial and Sam Bankman-Fried?
Guy does. Guy's got a bunch of insight. He had Tiffany Fong on.
I did, yeah. I did.
Yeah,
well, I can tell you guys one thing. He's guilty.
Perry Mason moment right there. Thank you, Guy.
And that's it. No, yeah, I had a really interesting chat with Tiffany on Sunday night, and we put the video out yesterday. And I just wanted to get a sense of what it had been like, because obviously she'd been in court every single day for the trial, so had seen things up close. And she said, that pretty much the first thing she said was, it is not looking good for SBF. The prosecution have done what seems to be a pretty first-class job. And I mean, it's not exactly, they didn't exactly have the hardest job in front of them. I mean, the evidence, there's a mountain of evidence and there's a mountain of witnesses. And I think it's the witnesses that have been particularly effective. Gary Wang was the kind of first one, and then Caroline Ellison, I think, was the one that everyone was anticipating, because she was, particularly close to him, co-CEO of Alameda. And her testimony was pretty damning, Tiffany said. And actually, she said Nishad Singh, the engineering director, his was pretty damning as well. He kind of, his had focused on kind of all the wild spending that was going on. And he'd actually stood up to SBF and said, look, what are you doing? Where is this money going? And there's the wonderful anecdote. I think it was Nishad Singh who, as everything was crumbling, as it really started to fall apart, he actually shouted at SBF, will you please stop playing effing World of Warcraft, or whatever it was. Just extraordinary. So yeah, I think from talking to Tiffany and kind of following the case, the question is not, the only questions are, is he going to be guilty on all counts? He's facing 7 counts at the moment. They're mostly, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, etc. He's got more to answer next year. I think that's when the bribing Chinese officials and I think campaign financing charges, I think that's when he's hit with them. But the only question seems to be, is he going to be found guilty on all 7 counts, which looks pretty likely. And in that case, how long does he get? And the maximum number that's been kind of kicked around, I think, is 115 years. True. The consensus seems to be, from what Tiffany said, of talking to people around the court, from talking to lawyers and stuff, he probably, even if he is, I think, guilty on all or most of the counts, won't get anything like that long, which I think could be, I'm not a lawyer. Tiffany isn't a lawyer, so we don't know for sure. But that's what she was saying, and I think that's something that people may have to prepare for, because I think a lot of people are sort of assuming that they're going to lock him up and throw away the key. That might not happen. It might be 25, 30 years, out with good behavior, out in half of that. And let's face it, I don't see Sam Bankman-Fried tattooing his face and joining a prison gang anytime soon. So you'd have to imagine he would behave himself inside. So that, I think, is something that people should perhaps steel themselves for, in that they might not get that kind of retribution that they're hoping for. But certainly it seems to have gone terribly for him. The defense, there was a lot of criticism of the defense. They didn't really land punches on witnesses like Caroline Ellison. But I mean, I think they've had a really difficult job. And then Sam himself takes the stand and does his usual sort of word salad answers. And, funnily enough, when the prosecution have something to ask him, he doesn't remember. He's got an answer for his defense team. But when it's a prosecution question, it's like, I don't recall. So
perfect impression. Sorry, guy.
Can you actually can you run with that impression? That might be kind of interesting.
I did do a video. We managed to get hold of an orange jumpsuit and a sort of fuzzy fright wig here in Dubai. I did do a spoof video of that at one point, which I think cheered people up. But yeah, it doesn't look great for him. But maybe 100 years in jail is not going to happen. I don't know. But I think their closing arguments are either done or today. Yeah. So I think we should have a result on it fairly soon, I think.
All right. Well, that's good to know. I think everyone in crypto would love nothing more than to just sort of close that chapter and
Yeah.
and move on with our with our lives and focus on other things. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I don't know if Rob, you have anything else to add to that or anything else, but if you do, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll just search for some questions here in the chat.
While you're looking for questions, I kind of agree with Guy. I don't think that Sam is going to voluntarily join any gangs, but I think he may be a part of those at some point for a sack lunch. So good luck, Sam.
Yeah. Who knows? It's yeah, I think you're right, Ben, as well. I think people, the overriding impression I get from reading comments and reading stuff in the media about it, I think there is a real desire to kind of get this thing wrapped up, move past it. Tiffany said one thing, we didn't manage to include it in the interview video that we put out, but I did ask her whether sort of crypto itself had been talked about a lot during the trial, because you saw all these headlines before it kicked off, crypto is on trial, etc. And I think we were all at pains to sort of point out, no, Sam Bankman-Fried is on trial. This isn't a crypto thing. And I said, did crypto get discussed a lot? Was it a talking point? And she said, no, not really. It was very much focused on what had happened at FTX and Alameda, the personalities involved, which I think is good news, because this whole crypto on trial thing was always nonsense, and I'm glad that doesn't seem to have played out. That said, there'll be plenty of editorials once the trial is over and he's been sentenced. There will, I think that kind of nonsense will surface again. But it's important, it's important to remember that this wasn't crypto on trial. It's Sam Bankman-Fried.
Exactly. Ooh, it's a good one.
All right, what do you guys think? Any quick tips for someone looking to enter the market right now?
Don't chase pumps, long-term wins, and make sure that at some point you take profits along the way, because nobody ever went broke taking profits.
Yeah. Can I add one thing to that as well? I think if you're entering the market now and you're looking ahead to next year, to the bull market, etc. One thing that I think a lot of people neglect to do is to open sort of a number of exchange accounts, because I think that can be a really useful thing. Some people will just use like one. They might just use Coinbase, or they might just use Binance, or whatever. I've learned from long experience that it is good to have several, because some coins, some tokens will be available on some and not others. You've got to consider your fiat on and off ramps as well. The more options you can have on that, the better, because you do never know when, especially in the US, but elsewhere, you never know when a fiat off ramp might be shut down.
That's a good point.
And
great point.
I think if you can keep your options open on that will save you a lot of stress. The last thing you want to do when everything is pumping is to try and open a new exchange account in a hurry. That is never fun.
Perfect.
Yeah, once things get moving, it's hard to. I mean, I remember like in 2017, a lot of people you couldn't even sign up for some of these exchanges, because there was just so many people coming in. I mean, again, that was in relation to where it is today. That was still a couple years out, right? Like post halving year and everything. But I know a lot of people were kind of upset that they couldn't do that.
Even 2021, there was an issue with Coinbase would go down every so often, and people are like, "Oh, I missed out my sales." It happens.
I think as well, another thing with signing up for lots of exchanges, I noticed Steve in the comments has said, be cautious about signing up for exchanges. Your email and potentially passport will end up on the dark web. I mean, I think that, certainly you should be mindful of signing up for reputable exchanges as well. And for God's sake, folks, use a different complex password. I think 18 characters is the thing that will take them literally centuries to crack. So, use a different complex password for each one, and practice, all safety, and use two-factor authentication as well. But do it now, do it in advance, and it will be a much less stressful experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Let's see see what you're talking about. I'm just putting those comments on the screen. Let's see. Any other questions here? Let me scroll up.
The accent makes it sound more convincing.
Can we compare BlackRock ETF hype with any similar events in the past?
Ooh.
CBOE? Bitcoin futures? Remember that? Remember in December 2017?
Yeah.
The futures was going to bring everything in. Everything was going to pump because now institutions are here. And what happened? From the 15th to the 17th, that was the beginning of the decline of Bitcoin, especially going into 2018. The only thing that actually did pretty well was Ethereum in January 2018. But besides that, everything took a dive. I remember Dan Moorhead, he even said, this is bad, and I'm actually going to get out of the market for a little bit and take everything with me and let me know when this is over. And he was right.
Do you know another thing I remember people getting excited about? Sorry, Ben. And it seems so stupid in retrospect, but I remember there was quite a lot of excitement about Gary Gensler taking over at the SEC. I don't think it was ETF level, but I remember there was a lot of people were quite optimistic because they were like, this is a guy who has taught blockchain at MIT. You know, this is a guy who gets it, who understands it. And so there was a lot of hope, possibly the most misplaced hope, possibly the most disappointing appointment yet. But I do remember there was, this guy knows what a blockchain is. This guy isn't, just some TradFi guy. Well, we all know how that turned out.
True.
That was weird because it used to be people were more optimistic, but it seems like he went from being like sort of the hero to the villain,
very quickly as well.
Yeah. Someone says when to look into altcoins. My portfolio is mainly Bitcoin with a bit of ETH. Look, I think it always depends on your own risk tolerance. I think all three of us up here have different strategies, and I think all the different strategies make sense depending on what your risk tolerance is, right? Like Rob has been DCAing alts. Some of them he's made money on, some of them he hasn't, right? I'm more in the camp of crypto portfolios should remain Bitcoin heavy at this point because, and I've said this before, right? If altcoins go somewhere, it's only because Bitcoin went there first, right? And that's why the Bitcoin dominance just keeps going higher. So, I think there's a lot of different strategies, and I don't really think there's necessarily one strategy that's going to be sort of the right one. It's more like what kind of risk do you want to take on? Someone says, Guy, they remember your videos about that.
I did this. I hold my hands up. Like I was one of those people who was excited about that. Who was excited about Gary Gensler. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that everyone else was losing their head and I was cool about it. I did genuinely think that Gary Gensler could be a real force for good before he was appointed. So yeah,
right.
I'm as disappointed as everyone. Pig money.
Well, I don't think you were wrong to think that. If you have someone who's literally teaching blockchain classes at a university, like who would have thought that he would have gone from that to then, kind of where he is today?
Yeah. It was the kind of, you kind of joined the dots a little bit and assumed that, if he's gone to the effort of understanding it and teaching it to others, you'd think, well, maybe he sees something in this, but I don't know. We were disappointed.
Someone says, does the government still have a bunch of confiscated Bitcoin that they're going to dump before the end of the year? I don't know. I think they still have some Bitcoin. If I'm not mistaken, don't they have several $1 billion worth of Bitcoin? But I don't know that they're planning on dumping it before the end of the year. But I do think they have some Bitcoin.
According to Bitcoin Worldwide, the Treasuries tab, it's USA has 207,000.
That's
Bitcoin.
about $5 billion, right? Or
that's 7,246,320,000.
Prices have gone up a lot. So,
that's right.
They're waiting to dump on BlackRock.
Actually, you know what? I think I remember earlier this year, I think they sold like 10,000 Bitcoin, didn't they? Like back in March or something?
Yeah, they sell every so often.
Yeah, but
Yeah, they do these sales. Yeah.
I haven't heard anything since then though.
Yeah, that's a nice story to get everybody worried. And then the next story you're going to hear about is Mt. Gox is going to dump, because I've been hearing that since 2017. So
Someone's got that in the comments already.
there you go. See what I tell you.
There's always something to worry about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why
If
DCA.
it's not Mt. Gox dumping on you, it's going to be the U.S. government or.
I think I think for me, like the whole like the Mt. Gox stuff is not something that's that big of a deal.
No,
but
no.
I think the bigger deal is just like, you know, sort of macro conditions. Like, do we avoid a recession? Do we not?
The money printer. Are we going to get
right?
into?
Yeah. Do we go?
We never talked about that, did we? I mean, once that happens, then of course that's the green light. Everybody.
But I think the hard part for me with the whole thing with the money printer is like the altcoin market really needs the money printer, right? Like they really need it. It's like their drug, right? But the counterpoint though is like you're not going to get a money printer unless there's a reason to turn it on, right? And if there's a reason to turn it on, it probably means alts aren't doing that well. How do you get to the money printer without going through pain first?
Well, you got to go through a lot of pain. And that's why like when Guy was talking about the ETFs, the narrative, that's why I have like my portfolio is still 75% Bitcoin, the rest are alts. So I have a risk tolerance, but I'm not too crazy.
Yeah, someone was asking what our what percentage our portfolios are Bitcoin. Mine has basically just been 99% Bitcoin.
Yeah.
For probably the last almost 2 years now.
Mine's about 40% Bitcoin, quite and roughly the same amount ETH.
Oh wow! Going heavy.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't made any changes to it for a long time.
Right.
Although that time may be approaching. But I could probably be heavier Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think as we move on, I think hopefully one of my alts will be the big bag, but who knows? Who knows? Who really knows?
Yeah, I mean, and again, like I think a lot of people sort of hear me say like 99%. They're like, oh, well, it was a Bitcoin maxi, but it's more like, guys, I mean, like look at, I was looking at a lot of altcoin Bitcoin pairs, and there are some that are up, but like a lot of them were putting in new lows last week, right? Like ADA was putting in new lows on its Bitcoin pair last week. So was Avalanche. So was Polkadot. A lot of them, they just keep going lower on their Bitcoin pairs. I think a lot of them are down 40 or 50% against Bitcoin this year. I just like, I can't, it's hard because it's like, you know, you have this sort of this recession that could take over. And I'm just like, you know, what do you want to expose yourself to in crypto? I'm like, well, Bitcoin gives you the upside without as big of a downside as the altcoin market does. Now, it does not potentially give you some of the oversized upside if altcoins really run, but I think it's sort of it's a much safer play in the pre-halving year. Bitcoin is than the altcoin market. And then we've seen the Bitcoin dominance go from what, like 40% to 54% this year. It's a pretty big move.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, I just remember in 2017 when I heard like people on YouTube say the same thing. They were like, I'm going to go heavy Bitcoin. I'm like, why? Because there's more of an upside to altcoins. I didn't figure it out until 2018. And I'm like, oh, it's because as far as risk tolerance and how much risk is actually out there. It's just, and of course, people who are like class of 2021, they listen to us like, why the hell would you go into Bitcoin so heavy? Because Radix is going to be the next one, or Solana is going to be the next big thing, or whatever else it is. But it's just because you just look at it and go, I really didn't take that much risk. I know Bitcoin's pretty solid and all these institutions are coming in. So yeah, man, I get a 1000x, but I'm okay with a 10x or 10x.
The other thing too is normally the altcoin market doesn't start outperforming Bitcoin until sometime in the halving year, right?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I guess some of the altcoins are off their USD lows, but I mean, if they're not going to outperform Bitcoin collectively until the halving year, like I sort of think like, why bother why bother trying to find the few that are going to outperform when most of them just bleed against Bitcoin until sometime in the halving year?
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up, guys? It's 10 o'clock.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just sort of the top of the hour here. So, guys, we're going to wrap it up. If you guys have not checked out their channels, links to that are in the description below. Rob over at digitalast.news, Guy at Coin Bureau. Guy even, I think he mentioned in the stream, they recently launched a new service. So go check that out. I think they talk more about the altcoin market. So if you're craving anything from the altcoin market discussion, and you're pissed at me for not providing it, then Guy can be your refuge, and so can Rob. I mean, Rob talks about altcoins, and he's up on some of them. So plenty of great stuff for you guys to get at their channels. Go check that out. Guy, what's the how would they find your thing, by the way? Just if you could say the link or say where it is.
Oh yeah, so it's called Coin Bureau Club, our new altcoin subscription service. If you go to sort of if you go to our sort of YouTube front page or the description of any of our videos, you'll see a link to our deals page, and then it's kind of at the top of there, and you can sort of find out all about it there. There's links all over the place on it, but the deals page is kind of the place to go.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I believe next week we will be on Rob's channel, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. Yep.
All right, guys. See you guys next time.
Adios.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ben.